turbo.
Who?
Prisha.
Initiating satellite relay.
Wouldn't want anyone missing.
There's no time to run.
This time,
With all my heart.
never been.
Share with the world what you've seen.
I can see why you're obsessed with missiles.
This is Captain Joanne, who has fought with honor and courage here today. Of power, and force her to have
Showering her with praise. Members, put out a bounty.
$30 million.
Captain J.J. Collins finds herself as the last line of defense when a group of terrorists seize a remote mid-ocean missile-interceptor station. With 16 nuclear missiles aimed at American cities, she must use her elite training to hold the command center against a charismatic but ruthless former intelligence officer. It is a high-stakes race against time, where every second determines the survival of millions.
Eddie Waldron?
Bad news. Remember? Because if you don't do that, it's one of those women, you know? She just likes to...
This is a setback. Ain't nothing.
Plate.
From here.
Understood.
Not fast enough.
Doing Russian work. Then became a PSYOP. Killed 2 prisoners while he was torturing them. Got a way to help you. Tacticians.
Stop that.
You can't go down there with wounds like that.
You're running out of time. 25.
Okay.
Whatever you say, Captain.
Care of it. X-Far's been activated. 12.5 minutes.
You see the console?
You just bought us 2 minutes.
Slicks like me. You're not a murderer.
The window I can't see in the room. I need you.
What do you mean, gone? Where is she? What?
It's on the roof!
All missiles.
Multiple missile launch detected. New targets. Required. Memphis.
Oh, man.
Do it.
Here you are.
Here.
D. I have it.
expires. 47. Intercept launch expired. 7.
Percent.
Battle. But nothing.
That's
It's my ride.
Hey guys, today we are diving into a high-stakes game of cat and mouse, where the prize is nothing less than the survival of the entire Western world. We are looking at a film that proves you should never underestimate a soldier with her back against the wall and a very large chip on her shoulder. Before you head off, if you're enjoying the kind of content I make, please consider liking and subscribing. No pressure, but it truly helps me keep the action coming. We start our story in the cold and lonely depths of the Pacific, where a massive floating platform serves as one of only 2 places capable of stopping a nuclear strike. The movie opens with a series of frantic news reports that set the stage for our nightmare scenario. 16 nuclear missiles have been stolen from a Russian site, and the only things that can stop them are 2 interceptor bases. One is in Alaska, and the other is right here on this floating tin can known as SBX-1. We see the Alaska base get wiped out in a matter of seconds, which puts all the pressure on our main character. Captain J.J. Collins is played by Elsa Pataky, and she arrives at the base looking like she really does not want to be there. She has a history with the military hierarchy that involves her reporting a high-ranking officer for misconduct, which led to her being bullied and sidelined. It is the classic trope of the hero who is too good for the system, and the system hates them for it. She is greeted by some fellow soldiers, but the vibe is immediately tense. The sounds of the base are industrial and heavy. You can hear the constant thrum of the engines and the metallic clank of boots on steel gratings. The air feels thick with salt and the smell of diesel. JJ is assigned to the command center, which is basically a high-tech room filled with monitors and buttons that look very expensive. She meets the commander, who seems a bit over his head, and a few other crew members, including a guy named Shaw, who provides some much-needed technical support, and a guy named Beaver, who is mostly there to look suspicious.
Suddenly, the base is under attack. It is not an external invasion, but an internal coup. A group of terrorists, led by a man named Alexander Kessel, has managed to infiltrate the base by posing as maintenance workers. Kessel is played by Luke Bracey, and he has that specific look of a guy who thinks he is the smartest person in the room because he read one philosophy book. The takeover is brutal and fast. We hear the sharp crack of suppressed gunshots and the thud of bodies hitting the floor. The mercenaries move with a synchronized efficiency that tells us they are not just random thugs. They take out the security detail with ruthless precision, and the sound of suppressed gunfire is like a series of dry coughs echoing through the narrow corridors. JJ hears the commotion, and her training kicks in instantly. She manages to get inside the command center and seal the heavy blast doors just as the terrorists arrive. The sound of those doors slamming shut is a deep and resonant boom that vibrates through the floorboards. It is a literal and metaphorical barrier between the world and total destruction. Now it is JJ, Shaw, and Beaver inside, while Kessel and his team are on the outside, trying to find a way in. Kessel tries to talk his way in first because he loves the sound of his own voice. He tells JJ that he is doing this for a greater purpose and that the United States deserves to be humbled. It is the kind of monologue that villains usually give right before they lose. JJ is not having it. She is busy looking for weapons and checking the security cameras. The tension in the room is palpable, and the only sound is the frantic tapping of keys on the control consoles. Kessel realizes that words are not going to work, so he orders his men to start cutting through the door. We hear the high-pitched whine of a thermal lance, and the shower of sparks creates a tactile heat you can almost feel through the screen. JJ knows she cannot just sit there. She has to find a way to stop them from the inside. This leads to our first major action set piece. One of the mercenaries managed to crawl through the ventilation system or some other convenient hole in the architecture. JJ has to fight him in the cramped confines of the command center. The fight is messy and raw. There are no fancy choreographed dances here. It is just the sound of meat hitting meat and the heavy breathing of two people fighting for their lives. JJ uses whatever she can find, including a laptop and a heavy metal pole. You can hear the crunch of bone and the ragged gasp of air as she manages to overcome the attacker. It is a clear signal that JJ is not a damsel in distress, but a lethal weapon. Just as things seem to be stabilizing inside the room, we get the big twist. Beaver, who seemed like a goofy sidekick, turns out to be a traitor. He pulls a gun on JJ and Shaw, revealing that he is on Kessel's payroll. It is a classic move that makes you want to yell at the screen, because of course the guy named Beaver was going to be the rat. The betrayal adds a new layer of danger because the threat is now inside the room. Beaver forces JJ to open the door, and Kessel finally walks into his prize. Kessel is smug and arrogant. He starts explaining his plan in even more detail, because villains never learn that brevity is the soul of success. He has a plan to launch the interceptors, but not to stop the nukes. He wants to ensure that they hit their targets. He also has a live stream going, because apparently even terrorists need likes and shares in this digital age. He wants the world to watch as America falls. The auditory landscape changes here, from the chaos of combat to a tense psychological standoff. Kessel tries to break JJ's spirit by bringing up her past and the way she was treated by the military. He tries to convince her that the country she is protecting does not care about her. It is a manipulative tactic that involves a lot of whispering and close-up shots of JJ's sweating face. You can hear the hum of the air conditioning struggling to keep the room cool as the heat from the thermal lances lingers. JJ is playing a long game, though. She is looking for any opening to turn the tables. Shaw is also looking for a way to help, even though he is clearly terrified. The sound of Kessel's voice is smooth and oily, like a snake sliding over gravel. He is a man who believes his own lies.
While Kessel is talking, one of the nuclear missiles is launched from Russia. The countdown begins on the giant screens, and the room is filled with a rhythmic beeping that acts like a heartbeat for the apocalypse. JJ knows she only has a few minutes to act. She manages to catch Beaver off guard, and a new fight erupts. This one is even more intense because the stakes are literally nuclear. JJ uses her surroundings with expert precision. The sound of the struggle is punctuated by the metallic clatter of equipment falling over and the desperate shouts of the combatants. She manages to take Beaver out, but Kessel is still a major problem. He realizes that the direct approach is not working, so he decides to go for a more drastic measure. He orders his men to sink the entire platform. The sound of the base beginning to groan under the weight of the water is terrifying. It is a deep and guttural sound of metal twisting and rivets popping. The floor starts to tilt, and the tactical situation becomes a nightmare. JJ has to balance fighting off the remaining terrorists while trying to keep the interceptor controls online as the room literally starts to submerge. We transition to the exterior of the base, where the weather has turned nasty. The sound of the wind is a constant howl, and the rain is a frantic drumming against the metal deck. JJ has to make a run for the external controls, because Kessel has locked her out of the main system. This involves a sequence of her climbing through the guts of the platform. The sound design here is incredible, as you hear the rushing water below, and the metallic echoes of her footsteps on the catwalks. Every time she moves, you hear the jangle of her gear and the heavy thud of her boots. She encounters more mercenaries, and has to take them out using stealth and speed. There is a moment where she is hanging off the side of the platform with only one hand, while a mercenary tries to stomp on her fingers. The sound of the wind and the crashing waves below create a sense of vertigo that is truly effective. You can hear the strain in her voice as she grunts with the effort of holding on. It is a testament to the physical endurance of the character. She manages to flip the mercenary over the edge, and the sound of his scream is quickly swallowed by the roar of the ocean.
Back in the command center, Shaw is trying to hold his own. He is the tech guy who has been forced into a combat role, and his nervousness is audible in the way his voice shakes. Kessel is getting frustrated because his perfect plan is falling apart. He realizes that JJ is a much bigger threat than he anticipated. He sends his best assassin after her, a woman who is just as skilled as JJ. This leads to a brutal showdown on the rain-slicked deck of the platform. The two women clash with a ferocity that is impressive. The sound of their strikes is heavy and wet, wet because of the rain. It is a battle of endurance as much as skill. JJ eventually wins, but she is battered and bleeding. The sound of her ragged breathing is a constant reminder of how close she is to the edge. She reaches the external control box and has to perform a series of manual overrides. The sound of the heavy switches clicking into place and the hum of the backup generator starting up provides a momentary sense of relief. But the clock is still ticking. The first nuke is closing in on Los Angeles. The visual of the missile streaking through the upper atmosphere is silent, but the command center is a cacophony of alarms. JJ makes it back to the room just as Kessel is about to finalize his control. The final confrontation between them is more than just a fight. It is a clash of ideologies. Kessel is the cynical destroyer, and JJ is the resilient protector. Kessel tries to use a hidden knife, but JJ is faster. The sound of the knife clattering to the floor is a sharp and final note. She manages to regain control of the system and launches the interceptor. We see the interceptor rocket blast off with a deafening roar that shakes the entire platform. The sound of the rocket engine is a low-frequency rumble that you can feel in your chest. It is the sound of hope. The interceptor meets the nuke in a silent explosion of light in the high atmosphere, and the shockwave eventually reaches the base as a distant muffled thump. But there are still more missiles in the air. Kessel has a backup plan, because villains always have a backup plan. He has summoned a submarine to pick him up, and he plans to destroy the base once he is safely aboard. The platform is sinking faster now, and the sound of the water rushing into the lower levels is like a constant roar. JJ has to find a way to stop the remaining 15 missiles, while also escaping the sinking structure. She and Shaw work together in a frantic race against time. The sound of the keyboard clicking is a frantic staccato rhythm. They manage to initiate a mass launch of interceptors. We see dozens of rockets streaking into the sky in a beautiful and terrifying display of power. The sound is like a continuous roll of thunder that never seems to end. Each launch is a sharp hiss, followed by the deep roar of the engines.
As the platform continues to tilt, JJ realizes she has to get to the roof to be rescued. Kessel is already there waiting for his submarine. The final fight takes place on the very top of the sinking structure. The submarine surfaces, and the sound of the massive hull breaking the water is a monumental splash. Kessel and JJ have one last brutal exchange. Kessel is desperate now, and his movements are erratic. JJ is focused and calm. The sound of the waves crashing against the sinking platform creates a chaotic backdrop. JJ manages to subdue Kessel just as the American rescue helicopters arrive. The sound of the rotors is a rhythmic chopping that cuts through the wind and rain. It is the sound of the cavalry arriving. Kessel is taken into custody, or rather, he meets a watery end as the platform finally goes under. JJ is pulled up into the helicopter just in time. The sound of the winch and the feeling of the helicopter lifting off provides a sense of finality and safety. Looking back at the path JJ had to take, we see a woman who was pushed to her absolute limit and refused to break. She stood in the gap when everyone else had fallen, and she did so with a grit that was forged in the fires of her own past struggles. The movie shows us that heroism is not about being perfect or being liked, but about doing what is right when the cost is the highest. JJ's journey from a disgraced officer to the savior of the nation is a powerful reminder of the resilience of the human spirit. It tells us that our past does not define our future, and that we always have the capacity to rise above the challenges that life throws our way. The silence of the ocean at the end of the film serves as a reflective space for us to appreciate the weight of the sacrifice and the strength required to stand alone against the storm. It is a story of a single light shining in the darkest of nights.
Interceptor is a high-octane action film that delivers exactly what it promises, which is a relentless series of fights and explosions set against a ticking clock. While it leans heavily into classic genre tropes, it is elevated by a strong lead performance and a sense of pacing that never lets up. It is the kind of movie that reminds us why we love the action genre in the first place, because it provides a clear sense of good versus evil and a hero we can truly root for. What did you think about the way JJ handled the traitors on her own team, and would you have the nerves of steel to stay in that room while the world burned outside? It is a wild ride from start to finish. This film captures the essence of a modern-day action thriller and leaves us wondering just how much one person can truly change the course of history when everything is on the line. Suddenly, the base is plunged into chaos. A group of terrorists who had been posing as maintenance workers reveal their true colors. They start executing the crew with clinical precision. The sound of silenced gunshots, a series of soft puffs, punctuates the air as body after body hits the floor. JJ hears the commotion and her training kicks in. She does not hesitate. She rushes toward the command center, the heart of the station. This is where the control controls for the interceptor missiles are located. If the terrorists take this room, the United States is defenseless. She manages to get inside just as the attackers arrive. The heavy blast doors begin to slide shut with a low mechanical growl. Just before they seal, a fight breaks out. JJ uses her hand-to-hand combat skills to fight off the initial wave. The crack of a punch landing on a jaw and the grunt of a man being slammed against the steel wall fill the small entryway. She manages to lock the door, but not before realizing that one of her own, Marshall, is a traitor. Now, JJ and Shaw are trapped inside the command center with Marshall, who is held at gunpoint, while the lead terrorist, Alexander Kessel, stands on the other side of the bulletproof glass. Kessel is a former intelligence officer who has decided that the American system is too corrupt to be saved. He looks like he spent way too much time in a boutique coffee shop before deciding to end the world, carrying himself with a smug arrogance that suggests he has already won. He talks through the intercom, his voice smooth and cold, like a snake sliding over silk. He explains his plan to launch the missiles and watch the American cities burn. He offers JJ money, a new life, anything she wants if she just opens the door. JJ, being a professional who does not take bribes from guys in expensive sweaters, tells him where he can shove his offer. The psychological game begins. Kessel starts to use the monitors to show JJ that her father is being held hostage back home. The emotional weight hits her like a physical blow, but she refuses to break.
Kessel is not the type to give up easily. He orders his team to start cutting through the reinforced doors. The screech of a high-powered torch against the thick metal is a shrill, piercing sound that sets everyone's teeth to edge. Sparks fly like miniature fireworks, casting orange light across the darkened hallway. Inside the room, JJ has to deal with Marshall, who is trying to sabotage the mission from within. There is a frantic, messy struggle as JJ and Marshall fight for control. The sound of heavy breathing and the scuffing of boots on the floor fill the room. JJ manages to subdue him, but the threat from outside is growing. She realizes she needs to buy time. She starts to communicate with the outside world using the limited technology she has left. The clicking of the keyboard is a rapid-fire staccato as she tries to bypass the lockouts Kessel has put in place. It is a digital war being fought while a physical one waits just outside the door. As the torch continues to eat through the door, Kessel tries a different tactic. He uses the base's internal communication system to broadcast a message to the world. He wants to be a martyr, a hero in his own twisted narrative. JJ listens to his monologue with a look of pure sarcasm. She has seen guys like him before, men who think they are philosophers because they have a gun and a grievance. The situation becomes even more dire when Kessel reveals he has a backup plan to sink the entire station. He starts to flood the lower levels. The sound of rushing water, a deep and powerful roar, begins to echo from the depths of the base. The station groans under the pressure, the metal beams complaining with loud metallic pops. JJ knows she cannot stay in the command center forever. She has to find a way to take the fight to them. She decides to use the ventilation shafts, a classic move that never goes out of style when you are trapped in a high-tech fortress. The crawl through the vents is cramped and claustrophobic. The sound of JJ's knees and elbows hitting the tinny metal is loud in the silence. She emerges in a different part of the base, moving like a shadow. She finds a stash of weapons and gear, preparing for a full-scale assault. The action ramps up as she encounters Kessel's henchmen in the narrow corridors. The fights are brutal and efficient. There is no flashy choreography here, just the raw sound of impact. A heavy pipe clangs against a helmet, a knife slides into a vest with a sickening tear, and the gasping breath of a dying man fills the space. JJ is a whirlwind of controlled rage. She uses the environment to her advantage, swinging from pipes and using the steam from broken valves to blind her enemies. The hiss of the steam is a constant background noise as she clears the way back to the command center.
Back at the door, the terrorists have almost breached the room. The metal is glowing a dull, angry red where the torch has been working. JJ arrives just in time to stop them from entering. She uses a heavy forklift to pin a couple of them against the wall, the engine of the machine roaring in the small space. The crunch of metal and bone is a grim sound that signals her arrival. She manages to get back inside the command center, but the situation is falling apart. Shaw is trying his best to keep the systems online, but Kessel has a secret weapon. He has a remote device that can override the interceptor launch. JJ has to go outside, onto the top of the White Dome, to manually reset the satellite link. This means climbing out into the middle of a storm, with the wind howling and the waves crashing hundreds of feet below. The climb is terrifying. The wind whips around her, pulling at her clothes and making every step a gamble. The sound of the ocean is a deafening, chaotic roar below. JJ is doing one-armed pull-ups while a nuclear clock is ticking, showing off the kind of strength that only comes from being the protagonist of an action movie. She reaches the top and starts working on the satellite dish. The clink of her tools against the metal is barely audible over the storm. Suddenly, Kessel appears. He has followed her up. The final showdown takes place on the very edge of the platform. It is a fight for survival in the middle of a hurricane. The rain slicks the surface, making it nearly impossible to keep their footing. Kessel is fast, but JJ is determined. The sound of their struggle is lost to the wind, but the intensity is palpable. They trade blows, each impact dampened by the rain but still felt through the screen. Kessel mocks her, telling her that she is fighting for a country that did not want her. JJ does not care about his speeches anymore. She manages to get the upper hand, using her knowledge of the base to trap him. The sound of a metal cable snapping and whipping through the air is like a gunshot. It catches Kessel, pulling him toward the edge. He falls into the churning, dark water below with a splash that is immediately swallowed by the waves. But the mission is not over. The missiles have already been launched. JJ rushes back to the controls. The screen shows 16 red dots moving toward the United States. She has seconds to act. The sound of the computer's frantic beeping increases in frequency, a digital countdown to the end of the world.
She slams her hand down on the launch button. The base shakes as the interceptor missiles roar out of their tubes. The sound is a ground-shaking thunder that vibrates through the entire structure. One by one, the red dots on the screen vanish as the interceptors find their marks. The tension in the room is thick enough to cut with a knife. Finally, the last dot disappears. The room goes silent, except for the heavy, rhythmic breathing of JJ and Shaw. They have done it. They saved millions of lives while the world was none the wiser. The sun begins to break through the storm clouds, casting a golden light over the damaged base. The water starts to calm, and the sound of rescue helicopters can be heard in the distance, a welcome, rhythmic thumping that signals the end of the nightmare. As the authorities arrive, JJ is treated for her injuries. She sits on the edge of the helipad, wrapped in a thermal blanket. The smell of the ocean is now peaceful rather than threatening. Her father is safe, and her name has been cleared. She is no longer the outcast of the military. She is a hero, though she does not seem to care much for the title. She just wanted to do her job. The movie ends with her looking out over the water, a quiet moment of reflection after the storm. The station, though battered and bruised, still stands as a sentinel in the middle of the Pacific. It is a reminder that even when the system fails, individuals can still stand up and make a difference. The final shot is of the American flag fluttering in the breeze, a bit tattered, but still flying high over the steel fortress. Captain J.J. Collins reminds us that true strength is not just about the ability to fight, but the will to stand firm when the world tries to push you down. Her journey from a sidelined officer to the savior of the nation highlights the importance of integrity and the relentless pursuit of duty. In a world that often feels chaotic and overwhelming, the image of a single person holding the line against impossible odds is a powerful testament to the human spirit. It shows us that even in our darkest moments, there is always a chance for redemption and a way to turn our struggles into a shield for others. Interceptor is a classic throwback to the high-stakes action films of the 90s, blending intense combat with a claustrophobic setting. It delivers a fast-paced, thrilling ride that keeps you on the edge of your seat from the first punch to the final explosion. The movie stands out for its strong lead performance and its unapologetic focus on being a pure, adrenaline-fueled spectacle. What would you do if you were the last line of defense for the entire world?